Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. My name is Raheen Khan, and this is Food is Life, a real talk show series. So, welcome to this week's show. The last few weeks we've had a chance to talk to a number of people, and mostly community leads and food leaders. Today, we get a chance to talk to a student leader who's doing some really great work on campus, and so we're excited to have her on the show today. So what we'll do first is we have a co-host again this week. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our co-host first, Jamie White, and then we'll go ahead and introduce our student leader, Sanjana Sharma. So let me go ahead and do a formal introduction to Jamie here, and then we can bring Jamie on, and then we'll get started. Very exciting to really hear about the impact that, and the work that students are doing as well. So let's go ahead and start with Jamie. Jamie is the Communications and Engagement Lead for Meal Exchange and a recent Ryerson University graduate. She has an academic background in food nutrition and food security and is fascinated by understanding people's relationships to food and exploring how these relationships are shaped by intersecting systemic forces. Jamie finds inspiration and hope for social change through working with students and believes strongly in the power of young people to transform our food system towards a just and sustainable future. So welcome, Jamie, to the show.
Hi there. Happy to be here.
Great. Awesome. So, Jamie, one of the things that you've been doing with your work, especially, is really connecting with students, right? And student leaders. So I'm excited to have you on the show today to really have this great conversation with Sanjana, who's one of our really great student leaders, right?
Mm-hmm. She's a great energy.
That's great. Okay, so let's do a proper introduction for Sanjana, and then Sanjana, you can come right onto the show. Very excited to do this. So Sanjana is a leader of both the Meal Exchange chapter and the coordinator for the Students Feeding Change project at Lakehead University. Sanjana developed an intense connection with food early in life, being brought up in a household where food is cooked 3 times a day. Recipes are shared with neighbors and guests are greeted with sweets. Before moving to Third Bay for her bachelor's in computer science in 2018, Sanjana found out that food systems in Canada was very different from what was back home. There were challenges to accessing food here, and with the pressures of university life, Sanjana found herself and other students having a hard time maintaining a healthy diet, while also getting a taste of their respective cultures. Sanjana is a leader for the student community in Thunder Bay, from organizing events and running the local meal exchange chapter at Lakehead. Sanjana's goal is to bring good food to the campus and to help build a more connected community of people who care about food where it comes from and who has access to it. Welcome, Sanjana, to the show.
Hi, so excited to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
For sure. Thank you so much for being here. So, Sanjana, you've been doing some really excellent work throughout your time with Meal Exchange. So maybe you can start with telling us a little bit about yourself and about the role you've played as a student leader on campus, and particularly in the food movement at Lakehead University.
For sure. I came here in 2018 as Farin, you have been very kind to introduce me. And I am an international student, and I first learned about meal exchange soon after I started my program here. And my first connect was just that I understood that there was an issue with accessing food in Thunder Bay for students. And I was like, yes, I see this problem. And this is an interesting job. So let's just dive right in and see what the issue really is, because at that point I didn't really understand food insecurity broadly. But then as I talked to stakeholders and as I talked to more students, and as I did my first project, which was the grocery bus on campus, I understood so much more about how important it is to address this need, because students have, normalized this issue and they just call it, the usual struggle of being a student, and they just go with it. They're like, okay, I don't have food for tonight. If I'm just gonna have to survive on mac and cheese, so be it, because I have to study and I can't afford something right now. And I guess that's not okay. And it is not okay for students to not have access to the cultural foods that they enjoy having. Um, so I guess I just really connect there because I am also a vegetarian. So it's really hard to find good, affordable options on campus. And, having to work jobs alongside has made it really hard. So I guess just talking to more students, I understood that someone needs to advocate for this at Lakehead University's campus. And knowing that Meal Exchange is so dedicated in supporting this cause across Canada, I just felt empowered to take on this role and advocate for good food and form a student community that cares more about where their food comes from and who has access to it.
That's wonderful.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Sanjana. It's awesome to hear about all the different perspectives. You didn't, only go from your own, but you tried to learn from your community around you and doing your work. That's a really great approach, I think. I'd love to hear a bit more about, the role you've actually played on campus and some of the things you've done, and, at the same time answering, why you think food is an issue that students care about or should get more involved in, based on your experience doing things on the ground.
For sure. One of my first insights came from reading the Hunger for Knowledge survey that you had conducted in 2016. And I learned that Lakehead University was one of the most food insecure campuses from the ones studied back then. And knowing that 46% students at Lakehead have indicated that they're food insecure, I understood that there is so much more to this issue than I see on the ground. And I guess that's where I started. And I first did the grocery bus pilot, and then we discussed on how that was helping students. So in that program, what we did was we took students from campus to various grocery stores and we made commute easy for them by doing that, so that they didn't have to rely on transit or having to book cabs to go to grocery stores. And I guess that was a helpful pilot, but we just realized that we could do better, set up a better model. And after having a few meetings with different stakeholders and talking to various groups on campus, we understood that we could move forward by bringing grocery to campus. And that's when we started talking about collaborating with the Women's Center in Thunder Bay to run a project on campus based on the Good Food Box program that's run for people across Thunder Bay. And around the same time, we also set up our local meal exchange chapter, and I have had great support to run that from other students who are so interested in this issue as myself. And yeah, we had a lot of fun things planned for this year. We keep doing events and to engage with more students. And we had a student food summit lined up for our campus, but the pandemic happened, and we had to shift our focus to, addressing urgent needs and providing food to students who don't have access to financial supports and food supports at the moment. And even here, Meal Exchange, you all have been so kind to give us so much support. And with that, we have helped 35 students in May to have access to good food from local vendors. And I guess that is a great way of showing everyone how important it is to have good food on the table, and especially in times of emergency, and also, support local farmers through this initiative, because how would we support the city's economy if we were not supporting local vendors? So I guess I really like that standpoint of Meal Exchange.
Excellent. That's wonderful. Well, I mean, one of the things that you mentioned, which I wanted to touch on, is the fact that all of these things are happening on campus, and suddenly now we've got this pandemic happening. And so, it's kind of an interesting time, right? Because there's sort of the factors that would have prevented students from accessing food, or had it made it, certain barriers that students would have had, just being able to access good food on campuses when food service was open and all that. And then we've got this complete shift, in terms of having to pivot on the work, right? In terms of how we can, support students at this time in pandemic, sort of, this pandemic time frame. So, maybe Sanjana, you can talk a little bit about what some of the challenges were, when school's kind of in operation and things are working, like some of the barriers that students are impacted by, and then, let's talk a little bit about what that looks like in today's time.
Mhm. So, as I said earlier, that students were already really food insecure on our campus. So, some of the few barriers that were quite prominent across many student groups was the high tuition fees and costs of living that really had their pockets tight on where to put your money. Like, do you choose to eat local and good food, or do you pay your tuition and rent? That has been one of the main factors even during the pandemic. The other one has been that the transport services are not the best in Thunder Bay. So and many students don't have cars because so many of them are international students, and even other students who cannot afford to have a car and maintain it. They find it hard to travel to grocery stores at the moment. And I guess that's just gotten worse with the pandemic rolling in, because now just students are just afraid to step out. And like, we have a food care package program going on campus, but then even with that, students are so afraid to even walk up to the campus to, get their food packages, to secure themselves with food resources. So yeah, I guess that's what we're trying to eliminate here.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally. Thanks for sharing. I think you touched on a lot of important points, that there were major barriers to food access before COVID, and now they're only heightened for many students. And I think the beautiful thing about working with students is they're often so solutions oriented, and recognize that there are these challenges, but that there are actions you can take or things that you can do to kind of address these things. And I'd love to hear from your perspective. And there's been all sorts of interesting things going on at Lakehead for food security, on campuses in general. Where are areas for opportunity to improve student food security or improve campus food? What are the things that are going on that you really see could address this or start to move the needle?
Mm-hmm. One of the best things that keeps me driven in this area is that I see that there are so many groups of students, as well as faculty and staff of the university, and organizations beyond the campus, that are ready to support this cause, the student food movement, to bring better food to campuses. And I guess that's what just keeps me motivated to keep advocating for good food, to finally see better food on campus, and not just have to make sacrifices in our food choices and have to purchase expensive foods on campus that we don't even enjoy having. So especially with the pandemic, I have seen that so many groups have been collaborating so much more now. Like, there have been groups across the campus that we have been having meetings with for a long time now to set up some or the other program, but nothing ever really happened so efficiently. But now that COVID happened, everyone's joining forces to provide all the support they can to students, and I guess that's very motivating. So I feel like this could be a great factor in determining how we take on these issues in the future. And I feel like the university will take student food insecurity more seriously starting in fall and think about bringing good food to campus.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting how many like unique and different organize like partnerships have emerged right across the country. So it's neat to really start to see that. We've definitely seen that through Meal Exchange, how different companies who had never previously done work around food and food boxes, are starting to come together. We've got a moving company that, two moving companies that are supporting us in delivering food boxes. There's a company that's, that used to do just purely like distribution of food to to businesses and restaurants, and is now doing food boxes. There's so many really incredible partnerships, and we've had a chance to talk to some of those individuals in the show earlier, and are hoping that we can bring more of them on later on. But it's really great to see that. And one of the things that I wanted to kind of touch on as well is that we a lot of people or some people have started talking about the fact that the government's made certain announcements and has supported or is offering student supports in some ways. So why is it then that we're still dealing with this issue of food insecurity, right? Why is it that students are still food insecure when there are these additional supports happening? So I wanted to, from our perspective, one of the things that we've seen, and we'd love to hear, Sanjana, what you think, is, some of these students that are being impacted or don't have the kind of supports they need are international students, right? And that they're far more vulnerable than others. Maybe you can comment on that.
For sure. Um, so this is an issue that we are not only recognizing because of the pandemic, but it's something that's been going on for a long time, even before the pandemic. It's just that we have seen it in different forms. And I feel like students are not always given the appropriate supports that they should be receiving to thrive in their fields and focus on studying, even though they're paying such high tuition fees and working part-times to make a living, and working on side projects to work towards a better world. Because like especially during the pandemic, so many students are not covered, are not provided with fund relief. Like even though we have benefits like CERB and CESB rolled out by the government, which are great initiatives, but so many students don't are not eligible for them. So where do they get their supports from? And so many students cannot even are not able to work right now. And honestly, who would want the stress of working part-time jobs right now? So they are stuck, and I have talked to such students over the phone, and I really feel for them, because who is here to help them, especially international students, because they are kind of stuck between their home country and Canada. Like, where do they get the support from? And especially if they're not able to travel back home, it can be a really lonely and disturbing place to be in here, because they need some supports in some ways. And not everybody has the privilege of having good friends to support them emotionally through this, or somebody who they can talk to regularly, or even attend meetings. Like, a lot of my support comes from talking to Jamie, and to many other people, for just work. But that really keeps me motivated that better things are coming. But so many students don't have that hope. And even before the pandemic, I feel like this problem was highlighted as we keep paying high tuition fees, but what services are we really seeing on campus? Because we are paying the same amount of money as ever before for the food that we're purchasing. But if we don't even like that food, who is controlling that food market on campus? And why does the institution have control over it when we are the ones paying and we are the ones who need to thrive from it? How do you expect students to become great leaders in the future if you're not giving them the right supports to thrive?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really upsetting to see the lack of response for international students. I think it's, yeah, thank you so much for sharing your experience with everyone. And I think, a lot of universities rely on international student tuition. And now it's like, where is the support when the world is falling apart. I wonder if there's any, maybe campuses you've seen that have stepped up and supported international students in ways, or if there are other things, maybe advocacy going on that, people like me or other folks watching could be allies to international students right now. Just recognizing that, many are being left behind with current support.
I feel like so many student groups across Canada, especially student unions, definitely see that international students may need a little extra support than other students right now. So they are promoting several petitions that are being sent to the government regarding extending CESB supports to international students. And I guess it's really good to see that support because I see so many of my friends sharing those petitions as well. So people definitely care, and like, for example, like our international center in the university has been really active these days, and they keep finding different ways to collaborate with other groups and support international students because they see the need, and I feel that there's some hope in that. And if we just keep continuing to provide supports to different students and keep talking one-on-one sometimes, and giving international students and even other students a platform to express their opinions and share their experiences, I guess that's a lot of support sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And I guess I think one of the things that you've touched on, you mentioned also, like, there's international students and then there are other students. I mean, there are some students also that are not able to go home because of issues around domestic abuse or violence. There are many reasons, right? That, there's this assumption, I think, sometimes that people are like, oh, well, they can go back to their homes and they'll be fine. But that isn't always the case, right? And so it's important to name that. So thanks for bringing that up. And I think you're right, Sanjana. Like, there's a lot that can still be done to support international students and other students as well, right? To ensure that there's that eligibility and that support they need. Because this clearly is a difficult time, and isolation is not something that even anybody should be doing at this level and to this degree. It definitely starts to impact people's health and mental health for sure. So one of the things we wanted to ask you is is just around, I guess, what advice would you give to students that are other student leaders, to students that are dealing with food insecurity potentially? How can they continue to proceed with their lives, and how can they continue to sort of make a difference as best as they can?
So I'm going to be speaking from my experiences on this one, because I have had to face some struggles in the past in my fight on this issue. Even though I have so much support from Meal Exchange, I always get one-on-one support from Jamie especially. I still feel like there is not enough that is being done around this issue, especially because we know how severe it is and how severely it can impact people's health if they don't have access to good food. And it really frustrates me sometimes that even though I am constantly reaching out to so many students and organizations and giving them ideas, nothing's ever really being done very effectively. Everything takes time, but I guess that's also like the beauty of patience, because things do take time if they are fruitful things, if they're good things that we're trying to do. And the only thing is that any student who is trying to fight this fight needs to hold on to hope. I think that's the only thing that will keep you going. And don't be afraid in raising your voice, because there are people who want to listen to you, but they're too afraid to ask sometimes because they have liabilities. Maybe they are legally liable to somebody, or they just are afraid to step up and start the conversation. So if you don't have the space, if you were not given the space, literally just take it. I have not always had the confidence to step up on the stage and, and speak out and talk about these issues. But I keep reminding myself to take up the space that I can take respectfully, because that's the only way we will get more representation for students suffering from food insecurity, students suffering from because they're away from home or whatever their reasons are. That is the only way we will really see any change, because no one is going to willfully give it to you. They don't want to share the states sometimes. So take the space, take progressive steps, keep attending meetings, and keep talking. That's the only thing I can say.
Right. Well, I have one more question for you. What advice would you give, or what message can you give to people who are potential donors and supporters of Meal Exchange? What's, from a student's perspective, why is it important for them to support and to continue to give towards the work that we're doing?
Great question, because coming from a student, it might help us to secure some more funding. um, Honestly, we students are very grateful for all the support, all the financial support that we receive from funders of Meal Exchange and other organizations. But then, of course, there are 10,000 students at my campus, and there must be so many more across Canada and on other campuses. So the more the funding, the better. And we are always grateful, and there's always going to be need. And funders, organizations should just be rest assured that we are utilizing their funding and not, wasting it on anything. And it is always being used towards feeding people and running important initiatives and projects that are important to develop a better future, to bring good food on campuses, and to show everybody that we can be doing better. And honestly, there is only so much that student groups and charities can do. And it will be about time in a few months when the university has to step up and support us, because there is so much more that they can do in this. And it's just not a one-hand job. We cannot do it ourselves. So we definitely need support from organizations. We need their funding, and we also need the university to respond to our efforts.
Wonderful. Okay, well, we're almost at the end of the show now. So, do you have any kind of Jamie or Sanjana, either of you, do you have any last minute thoughts or things you want to share with the audience?
Um,
Go ahead.
You can go first, Jamie.
No, I don't have any more questions, but I would just say thank you. It's always so nice to hear about your experience, and I think you have a really beautiful and tenacious energy, which is inspiring to other students. So thank you for sharing that with everyone today.
Thank you so much. I am honestly very grateful that you keep giving me such opportunities to get more involved. And I truly try to make the best use of these opportunities to give a better face to the student community by also talking to them and then representing their voice on stage. So thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. And honestly, food insecurity would still be the same as 3 years ago, 4 years ago at Lakehead, if you hadn't started this project, Students Feeding Change, on our campus. And I'm so grateful that you did that, and I'm so happy and always excited to support it.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again, Sanjana, for being on the show.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your time and all the effort that you make and continue to make. You're definitely a great example of a student leader that is really on the front lines, so to speak, right? That's really trying to actively make change, and it's beautiful that you share your lived experience the way that you do. So thanks for doing that. It takes a lot of courage to do that. So I want to just say thanks for that as well.
Thank you so much, Farheen, for having me on the show.
No problem. Okay, take care. Hopefully we'll see you again soon.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, well, thanks again, Jamie, as well, for co-hosting today. This was
thank you.
Really great. Okay, well, take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, bye. Okay, everyone. So there we go. That concludes our session for today. Thanks again for joining. I mean, what a great perspective to be able to speak to a student leader directly and our staff at Meal Exchange who work so closely with the students on what it really means, to deal with the work that we're doing, specifically as it impacts students, and really being clear about the challenges those students are still facing despite the new supports that are coming forward. There are still students that are falling through the cracks, and so it's important for us to continue to do the work. So you can always learn more about what we're doing and find ways to support us at our website, goodfoodnow.ca. So until next week, take care. See you.